We're back with Liv from Pergamena, and so we have recently prepared a bunch of vellum here, and I think there were a couple follow-up questions. One being, why would I choose to purchase prepared vellum versus unprepared vellum?
Bottom line is, what do you want to do?
Okay.
What do you want to accomplish? As we learned the other day in the demonstration, preparing or just sanding off and getting the surface a little bit smoother helps some inks to adhere. It's really about what do you want to create.
Do people ever specifically want their parchment unprepared?
Oh yeah, a bunch of people do. There are two types of people who really want control over exactly how much it's sanded. We may not sand it enough for them, and they want to get the material a lot softer.
Okay.
Almost feel like suede kind of feeling.
Sure.
And then there are also people who want the skin whole because it still adds a layer of strength. Essentially, when you're preparing, if you think about your skin, you're abrading the surface and breaking it down. So for applications like furniture, when keeping strength might be key, wrapping a panel in it or putting it on a table, some painters may like trying the material without being prepared first, because if you think about it on like a microscopic level, you'd have a flat surface and there's not really much for your paint or your acrylic to adhere into. But if you have a somewhat grained or different angles and grooves, nooks and crannies, you'd be able to get more adhesion. More places for it to get into. But again, does that affect your line?
Sure.
You may want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus the cost, right? Would you say it's
cost
cheaper?
Will always be less because it's one less process we have to do.
Okay.
So it's going to be a little less money, and you get to roll up your sleeves and do some of the work. You get buff though, I will tell you. That's one of the benefits of doing all this. Tannery work.
Wow. And then I feel like when we were sanding the other day, there were some of the skins that felt like if I just sanded it a little bit, I kind of found these natural, almost moving lines within them. So I guess that would be another thing that would be a benefit of you prepping and sanding your own skin, would be you could leave those lines to sort of inspire what you create with that piece.
The amount of sanding you do, especially on the dyed parchment, it will reveal these amazing kind of patterns that you're not necessarily seeing the first time you look at it.
I was so surprised by that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So every single one is a little bit different. Every single one inspires you to do something. It's, to me, you get over the fear of the blank piece of page because there is no blank page.
That's a really good point.
You look at something and you go, maybe I don't want to use that one.
Sure.
And then you go to one, you're like, oh yeah, that, I don't know what you are. I think that's a common thing in when you like supplies like this, because you feel drawn to it. You want to use it.
I noticed with our different team members here, when we were selecting out the pieces we were going to use, they definitely picked ones that resembled their taste. So the fact that there was all the variety within what we were working on was just so cool. I just love that.
And that's why I'm really excited about the way we're kind of changing doing parchment. Because before, when the focus, and historically the focus has been this absolutely gorgeous, that's not up for debate.
No,
this is gorgeous material, but it's just one type of material. This stuff with the scars, the scratches, it calls other people in to use it in other ways. All of this while still being sustainable. All of this while also being a tough material. If my shaky, sweaty hand is any proof, it can take some erasing, some sanding, some corrections, even the Roycroft. You saw how nicely that erased. I mean, I was not holding back. I went after it.
You mentioned Roycroft.
Yeah.
What is Roycroft?
So Roycroft is something you may know as gesso parchment.
Okay.
So gesso is a term that we've heard around here too, and it is parchment, usually that has been painted with a hide glue.
Oh.
So as you can see on this lovely big calf, there are edge pieces.
Sure.
Those are usually used. What we do is we go around and we cut, as we make cut sheets and everything, we cut those bits off, we save them, and once we have a bunch of them, they go into a crock pot.
Oh.
Of delight, if you will, mixed with a little bit of calcium and stirred and heated for hours, and it becomes a glue that is then painted over parchment, and it creates a really clean, pristine, very strong sheet that also takes detail and colors beautifully.
Interesting.
It's a really great material for doing things like illumination. If you have to write a proclamation for a king and a queen, this is what you want to do. If you're being, if your work is being featured in the Cloisters Museum in New York, that's what you want to go for. This is the best of the best, and because it has a lot more structure because it's been painted with this high glue.
Yeah, so it's a thicker.
Okay. So you have, some people have less issues because it's easier to work with because they're not constantly trying to keep the moisture down.
Right.
And the humidity down.
So you might not need to mount it before using it, which would save you some time if you're doing
doing really fine work or watercolor. This would be a good time to use a really dry brush on a watercolor.
Okay.
That technique works beautifully.